You might think the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix was one of the most controversial moments in F1 history, and fair enough, it's up there. But today we're diving into something that might just take the crown for controversy, and it all goes back to the 2002 Formula One season. But before we get started, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on new videos. Michael Schumacher was dominating with Ferrari, at the absolute peak of his career, collecting wins and breaking records like it was nothing. Meanwhile, young talents who would later become legends, like Jenson Button and Kimi Räikkönen, were just starting to find their footing in the pit lane. We also had all-time greats like David Coulthard, Felipe Massa, and Mark Webber competing fiercely on the grid, each one of them pushing to make their mark in the sport. But while the spotlight shone on these battles at the top, behind the scenes a shift was happening that would reshape Formula One's future. Benetton, the team where Schumacher had claimed the first 2 of his 7 world titles, was going through a huge change. Renault, the iconic French constructor, had bought out Benetton, marking their official return to Formula One after a 17-year absence. This takeover meant big things for the 2002 season. Renault was back on the grid, ready to make their mark. Amidst all this, there was one name catching everyone's attention, a young, sharp development driver for Renault, Fernando Alonso. After spending a season at European Minardi F1 and working as Renault's test driver for 2002, Alonso's talent was undeniable. Renault saw something special and decided to give him a shot as a full-time driver. In 2003, he was promoted to a race seat, replacing Jenson Button. And, as it turned out, this was just the beginning for Alonso, who would go on to rewrite parts of F1 history himself. Just 2 years later, Fernando Alonso would reach the pinnacle of Formula One, winning the World Championship in 2005 and repeating the feat in 2006. But if there's one thing Alonso's career has shown us, it's that his highs often come with lows. After his 2 titles, Renault's competitiveness began to slip. Alonso made a move to McLaren, hoping for a stronger car and more success, but it wasn't meant to be. By 2008, Alonso found himself back with Renault, eager to recapture the magic of those championship seasons. But the 2008 season would be a nightmare. Alonso, who had been winning races regularly over the past few years, was suddenly stuck with a car that just couldn't compete. Imagine taking a modern-day Williams and weighing it down with cement blocks. That's probably what Alonso's car felt like. For the first 14 races of the season, victory remained elusive. Not only that, but Alonso hadn't even managed a single podium finish. Then came the Singapore Grand Prix. It was a historic race, marking the debut of the Singapore track in the F1 calendar and the first ever night race in the sport. While all eyes were on the intense title fight between Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa, Alonso was facing yet another frustrating weekend. He qualified a dismal 14th, just barely outpacing his teammate Nelson Piquet Jr. By all accounts, it seemed like another race that would end in disappointment. As the race kicked off, the top contenders, Hamilton, Massa and Räikkönen, fought for the lead. Alonso, meanwhile, had managed to avoid a penalty after a minor slip at the first corner, but was stuck in the midfield. Lap by lap, he was falling behind, losing up to 5 seconds per lap as his chances of a win dwindled. Seeing the writing on the wall, Alonso and his Renault team decided to try something different, going for an alternative strategy. It was a gamble in a race that had already seen its fair share of challenges, but Alonso was willing to take the risk. On lap 12, Alonso decided to take a gamble. He pitted for fresh tyres and topped up on fuel, which seemed like another routine stop, until everything changed. Moments later, his teammate Nelson Piquet Jr. crashed hard on the pit lane straight, smashing his car into the left wall and scattering debris across the track. And that's when the real controversy began. The crash triggered a safety car, and to Renault's absolute delight, the stewards announced that the pit lane was closed while they cleared the incident. For Alonso, this was a game changer. Not only did he have fresh tyres, but he also had a full tank of fuel. For other drivers, though, this was nothing short of a disaster. Nico Rosberg and Robert Kubica, who urgently needed to refuel, were forced to pit under the closed lane and received penalties for it. Now, the race split into 2 groups, the haves and the have-nots. The haves were the few drivers who'd managed to fuel up, including the Red Bulls, who lucked out by diving into the pits right before they closed. The have-nots, meanwhile, were the rest of the grid, desperately conserving fuel and just trying to stay on track until the pit lane reopened. Alonso, who had been miles from the podium, suddenly found himself in an incredible position. The car was light, the tyres were fresh, and the fuel tank was full. His chances had gone from slim to none to leading the race. As soon as the pit lane reopened, chaos erupted. Cars flooded in, with drivers even lining up behind their own teammates for a chance to refuel. In the chaos, there was drama for Felipe Massa, who accidentally drove off with the fuel hose still attached, knocking over a mechanic and losing precious seconds. By the time he got back on track, Massa was at the back of the pack. But Alonso, he was unbothered. Leaning on all the experience from his 2 world championships, he kept his cool, pushed the Renault to its limits, and ultimately crossed the finish line 2.9 seconds ahead of Rosberg. It was his first win of the season, an incredible comeback that seems too good to be true. And if Renault or Alonso thought the story would end there, they'd seriously underestimated just how big this moment would become. Remember those wild conspiracy theories your odd friend from school would swear by? Well, when whispers began to spread about Nelson Piquet Jr.'s crash being intentional, they were mostly dismissed in the same way. FIA President Max Mosley brushed off the rumours as speculation, and the incident seemed ready to fade into history. But the match was lit in August 2009, and it was Piquet Jr. himself who sparked the firestorm that would rock Formula One. Renault had just dropped Piquet Jr. after a string of poor performances, not realising the chaos that was about to come. That same month, a report from Brazil alleged that Piquet Jr. had been instructed to crash on purpose in Singapore, turning the supposed speculation into a full-blown scandal. The FIA wasted no time launching an investigation, and what they found would send shockwaves through the sport. Piquet Jr. gave a statement to the FIA, and Renault was soon charged of breaching Article 151C of the International Sporting Code. But the drama was far from over. In a leaked statement, Piquet Jr. accused Renault's top brass, team principal Flavio Briatore, and executive director of engineering Pat Symonds, of orchestrating the crash. According to him, they'd instructed him to crash at a specific corner to trigger the safety car, creating the perfect opportunity for Alonso's winning strategy. The accusations were explosive, and Renault immediately went on the defensive. Renault fiercely denied the accusations, launching legal action against Piquet Jr. and his father, accusing them of attempted blackmail to keep Piquet Jr. racing. The blame game quickly escalated, with Symonds blaming Piquet Jr. for the scheme, while Piquet Jr. pointed to Briatore and Symonds. Renault, under intense scrutiny, ultimately fired both Briatore and Symonds. The World Motorsport Council soon held an extraordinary meeting to address the scandal. Now known as Crashgate, Renault was handed a 2-year suspended disqualification. Briatore faced an indefinite ban from FIA events, ending his F1 career, and was barred from managing drivers, while Symonds received a 5-year ban. The Crashgate scandal shook Formula One, exposing shocking race manipulation. Renault's reputation was severely damaged, and while the team eventually recovered, Flavio Briatore's career in F1 ended for good. This scandal became a dark reminder of the importance of integrity in the sport. Amid the chaos, Fernando Alonso emerged unscathed. The FIA found no proof of his involvement, and he maintained his innocence. He went on to finish the season strong, even winning in Japan. On the Singapore podium, Alonso's words, "This will be a historic race," proved eerily prophetic. So, do you think F1 has more deadly controversy? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay on the lookout for more.